Hello, everyone. Sometime this week, people will be celebrating International Biodiversity Day, although sadly, there's not much to celebrate. I've lived on planet Earth for almost 90 years, and during that time, I've seen so many changes, including those affecting the environment. As a child, growing up in the UK, I spent hours in our garden watching the animals, birds, and insects. Now, 80 years later, due to the use of pesticides and herbicides, pollution, habitat destruction, and other harmful activities, our garden has lost over half of the bird species and probably around 80% of insects. When I was young, you couldn't leave a window open at night if there was a light on, because almost instantly your room would be full of moths and other night insects. Now, I'm excited if one moth flies in. And as we're now aware, insects, and remember they form a major part of the diet of countless animals, they're decreasing at an alarming rate worldwide. And this includes bees and other pollinators that we rely on to fertilize our crops. Sadly, we're in the midst of the sixth great extinction of plant and animal species, and this one is caused by human activities, caused by our disrespect of nature and the unsustainable way that we're plundering our planet's finite natural resources. It's important to stress that loss of biodiversity is increasingly triggered by climate change. A major impact of climate change on biodiversity is the increase in the intensity and frequency of hurricanes and typhoons, flooding, periods of drought, heat waves, and the terrible wildfires. And this adds to the threats to biodiversity already caused by habitat destruction, pollution, ocean acidification, growth of human and livestock populations, and so on. In other words, slowing down climate change and protecting biodiversity go hand in hand. Sadly, so many have become disconnected from the natural world today. Young people are preoccupied with social media and video games, and their parents have long work hours. Modern life, in other words, comes between us and nature, and what you don't know, what you don't understand, then you're less likely to respect and want to protect. It's our disrespect of the natural world that's led to climate change and biodiversity loss. It's so important that we all understand that we're part of the natural world and we depend on it for clean air, water, food, everything. But what we depend on is healthy ecosystems. An ecosystem, as I learned at Gombe, is made up of a complex and interdependent mix of plants and animals, each one with a role to play. I imagine it as a beautiful living tapestry, and each time a species goes from that ecosystem, it's as though a thread is pulled from the tapestry, and if enough threads are pulled, the tapestry will hang in tatters, and the ecosystem will collapse, and that is happening around the world today. So it's clearly of great importance that we work hard to protect existing intact ecosystems where they exist and to restore those that are damaged, which are everywhere. We must create a balance between present human need and protection of the environment for future generations. At the moment, though, we're so often using nature's finite natural resources for immediate gain without thought of the future. Fortunately, there are many organizations today working on creating a more sustainable relationship with the natural world. And nature is amazingly resilient. if we give her a chance. Places that have been utterly destroyed, such as an abandoned quarry or a terribly polluted river or lake, can, with time and some help, once again begin building up the diversity needed to make up a healthy ecosystem. It was in 1960 that I began my chimpanzee research in Tanzania. The Gombe National Park, where, by the way, we're still studying the chimpanzees, was part of the great forest belt that stretched across equatorial Africa. 20 years later, the park was just a small island of forest surrounded by bare hills. More people were living there than the land could support, and they were cutting down trees simply to make more land to grow crops to feed their growing families or to make money from timber or charcoal. Poor communities struggling to survive. So in 1994, JGI, Jane Goodall Institute, Tanzania, initiated a really successful, holistic, community-led conservation project, Tokari. It's our method of community-led conservation. We started in the 12 villages around Gombe. We introduced agroforestry, water management programs, microfinance opportunities so that people could start their own small, environmentally sustainable businesses. And we tried to get as many scholarships as possible to give girls a chance of higher education. Everywhere it's been shown that as women's education improves, family size drops. And back then, they were having 8 to 10 children per woman. We provide family planning information, which is really well received. The program is now in villages throughout most of chimpanzee range in Tanzania, 104 villages, and people understand that protecting the forest isn't just for wildlife. No, it's just for their own future as well. And so now trees have sprung up on the once bare hills. Some trees were planted around the villages, but the rest have grown from seeds lying dormant in the ground that is being given a chance to return to nature. And Tokari is now in 6 other African countries where JGI works to conserve chimpanzees and their environment. The resilience of nature is a real reason for hope. Once nature is respected and habitats are protected or restored, animals that were endangered can be given another chance. There are so many examples around the world. I'm really encouraged by the growing number of rewilding programs, and these are very successful in some countries where large areas have been set aside for wildlife. In some cases, animal species that have been extinct for hundreds of years have been successfully reintroduced. And increasingly, we realize the importance of green corridors linking protected areas, because these allow animals to move in search of food or mates. Young males can move out to start their own territories. Even simple actions, such as the decision to let wildflowers grow along the verges of the roads, make a big difference, especially for butterflies and other insects. And more bridges over and tunnels under main roads are being built, and these give animals a chance to cross the roads in places where this is a main highway for them. Another reason for hope is the energy and commitment of young people once they know the problems and are empowered to take action. Back in 1991, even back then, I found that young people were losing hope. They were angry, depressed, mostly just apathetic. I asked them why they felt that way. Well, our future is being destroyed, they said, and there's nothing we can do about it. But, I told them, there was a window of time to start healing the harm we've inflicted, but that we must take action. And so it was that JGI's humanitarian and environmental program for young people began, Roots and Shoots. Its main message: every individual, that means all of us, makes an impact on the planet every single day. And each one of us can choose the kind of impact we make. Every group chooses, it's bottom up, not top down. They choose 3 projects: one to make the world better for animals, one to make it better for people, one to make it better for the environment. Roots and Shoots is now in 68 countries with members from preschool through university, hundreds and thousands of young people. These groups are planting trees, cleaning up beaches, raising awareness about environmental issues. They're making an impact in their communities and inspiring others to do the same. And they're influencing their parents, grandparents, and teachers. Because we began Roots and Shoots over 30 years ago, many members who started back then are now adults, and some have gone on to become leaders in protecting the environment and its wildlife. All of them respect the natural world. It's so urgent that each one of us plays a role in reversing loss of species and climate change. We must remember that each one of us makes an impact on the planet every day. And so let's make ethical choices in what we buy, eat, and wear, how we interact with people, animals, and nature. And let's share stories of all the reasons why we should have hope so that we can save the world. Because without hope, we fall into apathy and do nothing, feel helpless. And if this happens, well, we're doomed, especially if it happens with young people. There's another reason for hope, and that's that more and more scientists are finally working to find technological solutions to enable us to live in harmony with nature. Given that slowing down climate change is helping species to survive, one important example is the increasing use of renewable energy from sun, wind, tides, and so on. There are even machines that suck CO2 from the atmosphere and safely store it. Electric cars are getting increasingly environmentally friendly as scientists work on better ways of making batteries with greater storage capacity and less environmental impact. We mustn't forget, though, that it's equally important to protect the natural world, especially forests and the ocean, the 2 great lungs of the world that sequester CO2 from the atmosphere and give us oxygen. Other ecosystems also store a great deal of CO2, such as wetlands and grasslands and the great kelp forests of the oceans. Safeguarding these natural carbon sinks from further damage is an important part of limiting climate change and thus protecting biodiversity. Another reason for hope is that more and more people are becoming vegetarian and, best of all, vegan. The billions of animals raised for meat in factory farms around the world need to be fed. Huge areas of nature are cleared to grow grain to feed them. Huge amounts of fossil fuel is used to get the grain to the animals to slaughter, the meat to the table. Huge amounts of water, increasingly scarce in some places, are needed to change vegetable to animal protein. And the animals produce a huge amount of methane as they digest. And this is a very potent greenhouse gas. Let me end with a story. A little while ago, I was talking to some CEOs, and one of them came up to me afterwards and said, "Jane, for about 10 years, I've really been working to make my company ethical in the countries where we source our products, ensuring there are fair wages to the workers, helping the poor communities, trying to get ethical behavior in our offices around the world and in the way we treat our customers. And he said there were 3 reasons for this. First of all, I saw the writing on the wall that we're using up natural resources in some places faster than nature can replenish them. Secondly, consumer pressure. People are beginning to demand ethically produced goods, to ask questions. Where was this made? Could we have got it closer to home with less miles? Did it harm nature when it was made? Was it cruel to animals? Is it cheap because of unfair wages? And if so, they're not buying it. But he said the third reason is what really tipped the balance for me. My little girl of 8 years old came home from school one day and she said, "Daddy, they tell me that what you're doing is harming the planet. That's not true, is it, Daddy? Because it's my planet." That reached the heart. People must change from within. Stories are the best way to create change, lasting, real change. Thank you.